Well, hello. This is going to be an episode for Titus 2:4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link this to uh, Twitter or X and a couple of other places so that mothers who don't have their mother or their grandmothers around to give them some just a little helpful information about being a mother. Um, they can watch this, and I know I can't come watch your children and help you out in that kind of way. And it's not going to be individualized information. But if you are interested, please, if you have something that you think I might be able to answer, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to or not, but please put your questions in the comment section and I'll try to get to them next time because if I can help you, I would love to do that. Okay, so today, what we're going to do is motherly instinct. Now, I'm I'm going to do this. Just give me a second here. I'm trying to learn how to. Uh, well, forget it. I can't do this live. Can't mess with the controls. But anyway, so I will be posting this. Well, I mean, I guess it's live, so it'll automatically post. I'm still trying to learn all this stuff. So, a mother's instinct. Let's talk about that. Okay, I'm going to give a couple of stories so you'll know what I'm talking about. Has a mother's instinct ever really been true? Um, can the media propaganda or even books override a mother's instincts? Well, I kind of think it's true. So let me give you at least a couple of examples of what I'm talking about. Bottle feeding versus breastfeeding. Now, that was a big, huge question back when I was a young mother. And I wanted to know where were all the mother's instincts then? Because people were being swayed. Uh, my grandmother told me that formula was scientific, that they know better. Your body is just a, Neanderthal, genetically thrown, evolving thing, and that our breast milk couldn't possibly be as perfect as the scientists could do. And this started in the 1930s. Uh, they had a way because they had gone from wet nurses to mothers. A lot of women, didn't have anybody to be a wet nurse. They didn't have. Well, I mean, let's just be honest. Slavery was when slavery was done away with, and a lot of people couldn't afford after that to hire somebody to breastfeed their baby. They didn't have those kind of people. So scientists started thinking, well, we could come up with something that will help these mothers that they could just buy. And so they had a breakthrough in the 1930s on how to preserve milk, and it's called evaporated milk, and we still use it today. And so by the time I was a child, we were given evaporated milk with corn syrup because once this milk was fortified, that was another thing that came out. Oh, it was fortified with vitamins and minerals, and voila, mothers began to be convinced that this was as good for them, for their babies, as their own natural milk. And what I was told, my grandmother told me, this is oh my goodness, when was this? The 1980s. My grandmother told me, when they were young, it was only the commoners that would feed their babies breastfeed their babies because they believed that it hurt women's breasts, that it would, that you wouldn't have the youthful breasts if you breastfed. And it was all just propaganda to get mothers into a career, out of the home. And I can tell you, It was considered immodest and disgusting when I was a young mother to breastfeed your no matter how immodest, no matter if you put something over you, you couldn't see the baby. The baby would be dying in there of heat. But uh, there was nothing being exposed, and yet people were thinking, that's disgusting. Don't breastfeed your baby in public. And I can tell you how many bathrooms, women's bathrooms, I was relegated to breastfeed my baby. And nobody could understand why I would do that. Why don't you just bottle feed her? It's no big deal. Anyway, so that was where was all of our mothers' intuition then? It just seemed to have been completely well, and not everybody, of course, I'm just generalizing. But my experience was a lot of the women were in agreement that breastfeeding was not a big deal. And that same grandmother, she was really smart in many. She was a great mother in many ways, but I don't know about her motherly instincts because when car seats came out, my grandmother was furious because car seats were very expensive. And you were not allowed to take your baby home from the hospital. I'm sure it's the same way now. Without a car seat, you had to show your physician that you had a car seat in the car to take your baby home in. And my grandmother was just furious. She goes, that's ridiculous. She goes, I have never, ever, ever known any baby to have been killed in a car with its mother or dad, And anyway, so I asked a couple people, and indeed, nobody knew of anybody that was killed that way, but I'm sure it happened. And it wouldn't even matter, even if it just prevented it for that one or two that happened. I'm all for car seats. I'm just telling you that what was said back then. So, other than these things, these women were pretty good mothers. But with the introduction of technology and, of course, the media, it was a big business to start promoting things to mothers. And I'm not sure that that wasn't, in a way, throwing off mothering skills. Now, I don't know that. I have no idea what mothering was like in pre 19, 60s. But it's just a question. But it's gotten me to think about this idea of motherly instinct. And when I look around at mothers today, I'm just not sure a lot of them have a natural mother's instinct anymore. And maybe there never was one. Maybe this idea of the motherly instinct came when women actually watched their mothers and their aunts or cousins taking care of their own babies. Maybe this has always been passed down from mother to child rather than anything instinctual. And I've noticed something that many little girls are not interested in playing with dolls, especially baby dolls. Now, I have noticed even that there are a lot of kids in their 20s that even think it's creepy for little girls to play with dolls. But I think in the past, so you see, children want to mimic their parents. And when they don't see their parents with babies, it's like they're playing, pretending to the pretend is practice for when they're older. And so just a second here. I'm gonna make sure I'm not okay. I know my internet was acting funny, and I just need to make sure I'm not off yet. Or sometimes it gives me those flashes. Your internet is being interrupted. Okay. So these young girls would play with dolls, baby dolls specifically, so that they could be like their mommies. They want a baby too, because they always, and so when mothers are not having extra children besides their one or two children, then these kids never grow up seeing their parents with babies. And so the mimicking of mommy is now cell phones. Hi, how you got doing? They're on cell phones now because that's what they're seeing their parents do. And I've heard throughout my life and witnessed many utter failures of mothers who have never been around children, don't have any idea what they're doing. Um, I know of one girl that didn't even know you were supposed to change your baby after they uh, diaper. You know these diapers now. I never used disposable diapers. That's how old I am. But well, on my babies anyway. And so you knew immediately you got to change that baby. You didn't want him to get red or get a little diaper rash. You didn't want anything like that. So you would always change them really fast. But now with disposable diapers, they're so expensive that I've actually heard some parents say, "We're just, we can't afford to to let them, change them all the time." And uh, that's very shocking to me. And you these wet wipes. Again, I'm happy with wet wipes. They're fine. But I look at that and I go, you've got to use up a lot of wet wipes to really get a child clean. You and you're gonna cause a lot of problems for your child. They're gonna get lots of rashes if you don't really get them clean. We used to take a wash rag and we would put a little bit of soap on it and we would get the water warm, not too hot. You always check it. And then you'd wash the baby really thoroughly and then do a second wash with just water, a wash rag with just water. And yes, you had to do lots of laundry. You did lots and lots of, but that was just the way it was. And now these little wet wipes worries me, and they don't realize how clean these little kids need to get. So, I've also heard of mothers that say, "Oh, I just let my baby scream. Just let him scream. It's not going to hurt him." And okay, I think it's okay when you put your baby down when they don't want to nap. Let's just say lots of little babies don't want to take naps, so you put them down and they'll cry and they'll cry and they'll cry. But I would set a limit, 3 to 5 minutes maximum. Now, if they would stop and then they would start crying again 15 minutes later, that's a little bit different. But if they just prolonged, I would always check on them after 3 minutes. Once in a while, five. But I would go in there and check on it because you just never know. Um, they could have hurt themselves, or you know what I'm saying. So I would always just go and check on them. But now these parents, like one parent, said that she just let her baby. Well, okay, she didn't tell me. It was somebody who was living with her. Said she let her baby scream most of the night, and she thought that was totally fine. Now, okay, and I don't know if that's an exaggeration or not. I'm just going to say I don't know, but it was bad enough for this person was very concerned about this child because the baby was just allowed to scream. And then I also talked to a woman who bragged about giving her child sedatives to get them to sleep at night. And well, what does that mean? And she explained what it meant, and it wasn't adult medications. At least it wasn't an adult medication. But I just couldn't believe that she bragged about doing that. And then there are a lot of videos on YouTube that are shocking because the parents just do not know what they're doing. They're well, anyway, I'll just throw out some of these things. Like one of the very first YouTubes, I've talked to my husband Arthur about this, and he said the very first YouTube he saw that was shocking was that a mother was teaching her 3-year-old how to smoke. That she was smoking and giving it to the 3-year-old. Now, of course, that's a mass. He even thinks that maybe it was on a news show where the mother was caught and put in jail or something. But the YouTube shows up a lot of bad parenting, like this whole smash cake for 1-year-olds. That children could inhale that. That to me seems very dangerous. I know you can, and I don't see how that. I don't find that funny. I don't find that cute. That is to entertain parents. That's really not for the child. Uh, and so I'm not a big fan of that. Getting icing out of their nose and out of their mouth, that's just, I don't really like that. I also see bad behavior where, okay, the child is acting bad and they're filming it, and the parent is laughing at the child saying swear words or the child doing something bad. Lots of videos with parents yelling at children, um, sexualizing children through what they're wearing, or letting them watch videos where the child is mimicking somebody on being sexual on a television show, or a singer that they're doing all the sexual dances that a pop singer is doing. No, shouldn't do that. Don't don't ingrain in your children things that God is going to have to take out of them. You know, yes, I'm not saying that they won't be saved. I'm just saying the Lord is going to put you through a sanctification process. And don't add stuff to your children on purpose, being a bad parent, that the Lord is going to eventually have to take out of them. Um, and the stupid thing of throwing pasteurized cheese slices on their head. I mean, that there's nothing, it's just, all you're doing is distracting the child. That's what it is. You're just doing something. We were taught to, like, if you're in church, and it doesn't work for very long, try throwing a second thing on there. It may not work after a few times, but we were taught when you had your baby in church and he started crying, you blow in their faces. And yes, that is not hurting the baby, but it works for about 3 seconds, and then that's over. And then they're screaming again. But people are putting bad parenting online for everyone's entertainment. And I think that is not good. Don't do it. If your child is, all the little baby ones, I'm sure are just lovely. I enjoy watching the little baby ones, but I also have, this is where I may not know. This is where I may be a naive older person, but I've been warned you should never put your child online because of predation and AI and stuff like that, that they could capture these videos. So I'm not advocating you put your children online, but at most, please don't put them online for the entertainment of the world, for them being bad or you being a bad parent. That's just, oh, anyway. Okay, so we tend to be, as a culture, we swing back and forth. When I was young, in the 1960s, there was a book called Summerhill, and there was uh, all these studies of children, and that you shouldn't discipline your children. You should let them live like Lord of the Flies, and just let them discipline themselves. And you aren't supposed to invade in their learning process. Now, by the time I was older, it wasn't that way, and I was actually raising my children, but I wouldn't have done that anyway. But we swing from very, very permissive parenting to the opposite. And that's where we're going now. We are going where I'm seeing this a lot, that parents do not know what to expect. They're going in saying, we're going to discipline our children. And that's a good thing. But first of all, they don't know how to discipline. And they discipline them in things that irritate them instead of things that are really called for. They're not age appropriate discipline. They're expecting children to be better behaved. I one time saw a baby was like 3 months old and was whacking, and he flicked, and no, we don't hit. Well, I get that, but at 3 months they don't have control over their hands. And he wasn't. I would have stopped I would have stopped this father if I had seen that there was anything more than abusive going on. But he just wasn't understanding. And I would love to just be able to walk up to people, like at restaurants, because this was at a restaurant, and just say, can I give you a bit of advice? But you can't do that anymore. So, but children certainly, even if a child can understand what you're saying, that doesn't mean they can be brilliant kids and understand what you're saying, but they do not have the experience of knowing how to control themselves to do that. So, and then a lot of parents will say something, well, don't put your shoes there, put your shoes in your closet. And then, the next day they'll go, I told you this once to a 2-year-old. Well, children just need to hear things. They're not deliberately disobeying. Most children want to obey. They want to. It's in their nature to want to obey their parent. So just keep that in mind. So many people just don't know it's normal for children because they've never seen children being raised. So I'm seeing this a lot of women today who are older mothers. They're wanting to rely on their basic instinct to raise their children. And I don't know if that's there. I think the basic instinct may be somewhat of a myth. Now, women are nurturing. That is our basic instinct, yes. But that's a general feeling and doesn't really always equate with doing things properly with children. Just because we have a nurturing instinct doesn't mean we know uh, how to react when a child breaks something. You've got to know, well, what was their intent? Are they old enough to be able to control that? You know what I'm saying? Uh, uh, some There are people that don't like when children throw stuff off of their uh, their plate, and that's normal. That's a normal thing for a child until a certain time frame. So you might as well not waste your time getting upset with them. And it's hard for them when they can't help themselves, and then their parents are mad at them. Uh, yes. So this motherly instinct. I'm not sure that's reliable anymore. We have had several generations raised by mothers who worked. And when a woman works and puts her child in daycare or gives it to somebody else, that same mother is not going to be able to help her child as they're going to think they can, but they just don't know children as much as they ought to know. I got to be careful. I said this. They don't know how to help their daughters because they were at work. And I'm not saying that they had to go to work. I mean, I'm not, oh, wow. I'm not trying to see when I get concerned, I'm saying something wrong. I'm not saying women worked on purpose. Lots of women had to work. I'm not chastising anyone. But what I'm saying is, we don't have wisdom passed on anymore. We're not seeing our daughters are not seeing us raise children. We're not passing down information that we've learned through thousands and thousands and thousands of generations of motherhood. And so what we're doing now is we're handing over our children to the scientists to raise them. Because they study mothering techniques, and they study children have become lab rats in many situations, and we're not passing down good mothering skills from generation to generation. And now I'd say we have at least 3 generations where we're not really, we don't have enough women that are good mothers that are able to advise our young women. And it's not their fault. It is certainly not these young women's fault. As a matter of fact, I see a lot of young women who desperately, desperately want help. And we are here to provide that for them. Right now, it's just me. I would love to get some great mothers on here to give advice. And unfortunately, it's not just women who've had a lot of children. You might be able to find out some great things about how to raise children with a woman who's had 8 kids. But I want to see if those 8 kids stayed with the Lord until they were adults. I want to know how those children turned out before I would want to rely on them for good philosophy and ideas on how to keep your children Christian. Now that's the whole purpose of the show. There's lots of little techniques you can give on like I let's just like here's one. I would not everybody wants their children to feed themselves. Feed themselves, feed themselves. Here, all these techniques. Let them eat themselves. And that's when you're tired, absolutely. If they're old enough to feed themselves, let them feed themselves. But I wouldn't cut that connection with them too soon. They need that mommy. They need that nurturing of mommy's in charge. What you need comes from mommy. Here, that there is a connection that comes that goes from breastfeeding to feeding children um, with your hands, with feeding them baby food. You get this connection with them that they're gonna spend the rest of their lives feeding themselves. I wouldn't give up too soon on that really special connection of feeding them. And what you will hear from men, because men don't think about stuff like this, and men are the ones often writing and giving their advice, and women who work are going to give you advice on, oh, let them eat up their own stuff whenever they can. And I don't think this is a massive problem, but there is a nurturing that you would like to keep as much as you can when you feed your child. So that is okay. That's the type of thing I'm talking about when we talk about stuff on Titus 2:4. Learning to be the best mother to keep your children in the Lord, because you're going to spend a lot of time nurturing your children to love the Lord. But there are little techniques that will help them never want to rebel against God. And it is possible, and you can do it. And, not everything is going to be perfect. Obviously, we can't guarantee all children are different, and each child is going to have different things you're going to need to do. But there are some general rules that you can learn to help keep your child in the Lord. And that's kind of the reason we're doing this. And if any of you moms out there have some good ideas on what to do, please. I'm just trying to help where I can. I would love to get any advice that you successful mothers out there who've raised children in the Lord and stayed in the Lord. We'd love to hear what you have to say. God bless you, and happy mothering. It's the best thing in the world to mother your children in the Lord. Bye-bye.